Welcome to LangChain Academy. We're really happy you're here and decided to take the course. And we're really excited to offer this as our first LangChain Academy course focused on LangGraph. This is Lance. I'll be the instructor. I want to give some context for the course first, which you may have already heard from the intro with myself and Harrison, but I do want to just reiterate it here. I'll talk about the course structure, then we'll kind of dive into the mechanics of how you set everything up. So the overall context is that LangChain aims to make it easy to build LLM applications. Agents are one of the most popular LLM applications, and there's a lot of interest in what you can do with agents to automate different types of tasks, but they are hard to actually build and deploy reliably. So this was a really big motivation for us in building LangGraph, which is a framework for building agents and multi-agent applications. It's separate from the LangChain package, and the core philosophy is to help developers add better precision and control into agent workflows. Now, let's talk a bit about the course structure. The course is structured in a set of modules. We'll be expanding them over time, so I don't actually lay out here what all the modules are because I want this to be kind of future-proof, and we're going to be adding more over time. So the main idea is it's going to be modules. We're starting with 4, and each module focuses on a particular theme related to LangGraph. In this repository, you'll see a folder for each module, which contains a series of notebooks, which contain code, and they'll accompany videos, which will be accessible to you through the course website. Now, it's also worth noting the notebooks are standalone, so they can actually be run without watching the video, and they'll make sense because they contain explanations with the notebook, but of course, it's probably best to do them with the videos. Now, each module also contains a Studio folder, which contains a set of graphs that can be run with LangGraph Studio. We're going to be talking about all this in detail later, so don't worry about it too much. For now, just understand the course is structured as modules. Each module explores a theme. There's a folder in the repository for each module. The folder contains notebooks, which accompany videos, as well as a folder of Studio graphs, which you can run in LangGraph Studio. So that's the basics. Now I'm going to walk you through the setup from scratch, and we're going to go over and do that right now. So before we kick off this course, I want to walk through the setup from scratch. So right now I'm at the LangChain Academy GitHub here. And first I'm just going to grab the code. So I'm copying this here. I'm going over to a terminal, clone it, and I'm just going to create a new folder on my desktop called LangChain Academy. Cool. So there we have it. Now let's go ahead and open this in an IDE. I use Cursor. Let's go over and check that out. Cool. Open a folder, and let's go to my desktop, go to the course. There we go. Nice. This is all opened up. Let's create a new terminal. And let's look at the README. So, a few things we might want to do to get started here. First, I might just have a skim, look at what the overall context is. Now we've done this. So typically I like to create an environment and to install the required dependencies. So let's just go ahead and do that now. Say yes. Cool. Run here. Good. So now I'm in my new environment. Now I'm just going to install the course dependencies to my environment. They're all laid out here very nicely for you. Kick that off. This will take a little bit. Okay, so that ran. Now, the course is structured in modules. Each module, you're going to open these folders up, and you'll see a bunch of notebooks. Cool. So you can see there's 4 of them. Now, each notebook will accompany a video, and you'll have access to all that through the course. And to run the notebooks, now that we've set up our environment, we've run here, run Jupyter Notebook, and this should spin up in a browser for you. Cool. So now I'm in a browser. Very nice. Go to module 1. You can see all these notebooks are accessible. Let's open up the first one. There we go. So this is how I interact with notebooks. Let's go back now. So now we've made it a lot of the way through here. Let's talk about a few different external APIs we'll be working with. So we'll be using OpenAI. Just make sure you have an OpenAI key. You can sign up for one here if you don't have one, and set it in your environment. Now, we're also going to use Langsmith. I'll go over to show you that page now. Let's have a look at that. So Langsmith is LangChain's platform for tracing observability evaluation. It's very useful for a bunch of things, and we're using it occasionally throughout the course. So you can get it. It's free to use. We already installed this, so this is done. Just go here, set up an API key, and you'll set it in your environment along with LangChain Tracing v2 as shown here. So you just need to do that. And I mentioned that here as well. Just set those environment variables for you. Now this third one, Tavily, is an interesting one. I found it to be a very nice search API for LLMs and RAG. It's free to use. It's easy to sign up. We use it in a few lessons in Module 4, so we don't need it for a while. Now, there's other search tools out there. You're welcome to use other tools. You just have to modify the code if you want to. But Tavily is pretty easy. I tend to like it, so I use it here. Just sign up. It's free. Set your Tavily API key. So that's all you're going to need to do. So the final thing we're going to do is set up LangGraph Studio. Studio is currently only available for Mac OS. If you don't have Mac, it's totally okay. You can just skip those sections. And if you do, it's a very nice IDE for interacting with our graphs. Let's go ahead and show it quickly. So here's the Studio GitHub. You can see some visualizations here. It's a very nice IDE for working with LangGraph graphs. And you can download it here. Now, the only other thing you're going to need is to have Docker running. So you can simply go to this link and install Docker for Mac OS. Now, this is actually pretty simple. I only ran this once. Install this, and then I'll go ahead and show you. You have Docker Desktop just running. It's running behind the scenes. I've basically never touched this, so it's not a very big deal. It's just a step you need to run Studio. And I will then go show you. Now, every course module has a Studio folder. Open this up, and what you'll see is a couple Python scripts. So these scripts are the graphs we're going to work with in this module in Studio. There's requirements.txt. This tells you just basically the packages needed for this module. This JSON is a config file, which tells Studio which graphs to load. And you're going to finally see this env.example. This shows you the API keys you need to set for LangGraph Studio to be aware of, what environment variables it can work with. So all you need to do, this is the final bit, just simply create from that example, env.example, for each module, your own .env file. Run that. And then just add your keys to it, like this, boom, and that should be done. Just go through that process for all the modules, and you don't have to do this all up front. You can do it as you reach the various modules. But the main point is just make sure that Studio has the necessary API keys to run all the graphs in the module. That's the final thing you need to do. And when you open Studio, you'll see something like this. Let's go ahead and select a folder to work with. So I'll go to Desktop. I'll choose LangChain Academy. I'll choose Module 1. All you have to do is click on that Studio folder. This has all the files necessary for Studio just to work out of the box. Open that up, and you'll see the starting Studio. Should take only a minute. And there you have it. Studio's loaded those graphs that are present in Module 1. They're all listed here, so you can kind of switch between them, which is pretty cool. And we'll be talking about how to actually work with Studio later, but I just want to show you this is the basic setup. Once you have this done, everything else will work. So you can interact with it freely as we show in the various lessons, but this is just the basic setup process. So I can go back to the README. That's really the final step. Make sure that you have done all these steps before you get started, and everything will go smoothly. So now that you've run through all those steps, let's just talk a little bit through the basics. You're going to see I added this Module 0 folder, which just has one notebook, Basics, and all you're going to do is just run Jupyter Notebook. So once you've run Notebook, you'll see this in your browser. And I just click on Module 0, Basics Notebook, and there we are. So here's the Basics Notebook. We already talked through some of these fundamentals. You've done the basic setup. Now I just want to talk through some of the foundational components for the course. So we're going to be using chat models quite a bit. Chat models simply take a sequence of messages as inputs and return chat messages as outputs. So LangChain does not host any of our own chat models. We rely on third-party integrations. And you can see there's a kind of a nice list of a bunch of integrations that are available to you within LangChain. So by default, we'll be using ChatOpenAI because it's popular, it's performant. But of course, there are other models that you can use, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that later. So in the intro, we just talked through setting up your OpenAI key. And this is just a simple little code cell you'll see in some of the notebooks that will check to see that to make sure that actually exists, or that's already set. And if it's not set, you'll be asked to enter it. Now, I do want to make a note, with chat models, there's a few standard parameters. Model is just the name of the model, which you can see we set here. Temperature is the sampling temperature. The main point here is the lower, the more deterministic, better for things like facts or focused outputs. The higher, for example, closer to 1, better for creative tasks or generating varied responses. And so that's kind of up to you where you want to set that. I either don't set it, or I typically use 0 because I'm interested in kind of factual responses for many applications I work on. But in any case, you've already installed LangChain OpenAI, of course, with the initial pip install here, as noted. So all you do is just run this, and then you have access to a few different chat models. We instantiate a 4.0, we instantiate a 3.5 Turbo. Okay, so that's it. Now, one thing to note is all chat models in LangChain have a common interface with a few default methods. I provide a link here. You can browse a few of interest. We're mainly working with stream and invoke. Okay, so those are the two methods that we're going to talk about for the most part in this class. And the main point is these are all different ways to pass inputs to the model and to get output. Stream will stream tokens back or chunks, and invoke will just call the model and return the full payload. So, as mentioned, chat models take messages. Messages have a role, so, i.e. who is saying the message, and what we call a content property, which is just the content of the message itself. We'll talk a lot more about this later, but here's a good example, just like a kind of simple use case. From LangChain Core, I import human message. I create a new message that is hello world from name Lance. Okay, so this is the message. I create a message list. I can invoke the LLM or chat model with this list of messages directly. And I get UC AI message output. Okay, so hello, how can I assist you today? You get some metadata like token usage and so forth. So this is a very basic way to instantiate a chat model and run it on a set of messages. I do want to make a note that you can actually pass a string directly to a chat model, and under the hood, LangChain will create a human message from it. So this is kind of nice shorthand in the case that you don't actually want to create a human message. And so sometimes you may want to do this. For the most part, I'll be creating full messages in the course, and we'll be using a lot of message lists. But just keep in mind that you can run it just with a string. We can also run 3.5 just to showcase that. So cool. So those are kind of two nice LLMs. 4.0, again, $20 a month. You have access to the 4.0 series models or the 4 series models. 3.5 if you're on the free tier. Both are good models. I do want to make a minor note that the interface, for example, these methods, stream and invoke, are consistent for all chat models. So if here we ran from, for example, LangChain Anthropic, import chat Anthropic, instantiate an Anthropic model, these methods are the same. So you can still run all the underlying code in all of the notebooks for the most part with different chat models specified. Okay, so that's like a nice point. When I say for the most part, I do think depending on the model, you may see differences in tool use or structured outputs or sometimes specific chat models have odd requirements on message order, but these are kind of details. If you want everything to just work out of the box, simply use OpenAI. If you want to try other models, you're welcome to do so. There may be minor errors you encounter due to idiosyncrasies in tool calling or structured outputs or things like message order. So just be aware of that. But I understand if you have a strong preference for other models, you can consider them. So I just want to call that out. Now, there's one other thing I want to cover that was kind of presented in the initial README. We do use search in Module 4 for our Final Assistant and for one of the lessons related to parallelization. I mentioned that we are using Tavily by default. Tavily is a search engine optimized for LLMs and RAG. It's efficient, quick, it gives good persistent search results. It's easy to sign up, and it has a generous free tier. So I completely understand if you have strong preference against using this. That's okay. You can use other search tools as you see fit. You can swap out that particular search tool. It is only present in 2 of the lessons in Module 4. So just be aware of that. If you're okay with using Tavily, just set the API key here. And here's example usage. So all I'm going to do is from LangChain community, import Tavily search results, instantiate it, and invoke it with a question. Run that here. So you can see it runs. And you can see here's the output. I get some docs back. Pretty cool. It has some content like natural language answer, as well as the link that the content's derived from. So Tavily is a really nice search tool. I've always enjoyed it. It's a good free tier, so it's a good option. But of course, other tools like Google. We also use Wikipedia, which is free to use, and so that is another option. If you exclusively want to use Wikipedia, that's completely fine, or other search tools, also up to you. So this kind of covers basic usage of chat models, messages, and search tools. And now we'll dive into the modules, which will really go more in depth on all these ideas.